Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Cower. I'm with Pharmaceutical Containment Technologies. We're the ones that did all the containment systems here in the new lab. And we're just going to run through some brief training this morning on each individual system to make sure everyone knows exactly how to use it from the start to the finish for all your processes so that the system works as safe as possible and that you can still perform your operation. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some basic overview of proper gloving techniques and things like that for systems like this. And then we'll go through each individual system. We'll do the bulk powder system, the blending system, the temperature humidity controlled system, the press system, and then a couple of these big systems in the middle. And so we'll start with the bulk powder system. But first, we're going to go through just roughly some general gloving, sleeve protector application techniques. So first of all, obviously I don't have my lab coat on this morning, but you would have a general lab coat on in the lab here. And then you would put on a general lab pair of gloves. So these gloves would stay on your hands pretty much for the whole time you're in the lab as you go in and out of different areas within the lab itself. Then obviously, per the safety people, you would take these gloves off before you go into the common areas and things like that. So on top of the general gloves that you would keep on the whole time, it's a really good idea to wear sleeve protectors. And these would actually, if you can imagine I had a lab coat on, these sleeve protectors go over the lab coat and over that first pair of gloves, like this. The purpose of the sleeve guards is basically the inside of the enclosures. The inside beyond that face opening is kind of a contaminated zone. So anything inside there, whether it's your arms or your hands or even equipment that goes inside that unit, potentially can be contaminated. And then when you take those things out, you could expose the rest of the lab or yourself to whatever was inside there. So once you have the sleeve guards on, then it's a really good idea for each different enclosure or setup to put on a second pair of gloves as you enter the specific enclosures. And this is sometimes easier said than done. And it's a really good idea to kind of tuck the sleeve guards into that second pair the best you can. And the secondary gloves would stay on your hands while you're inside this containment unit, and then when you're ready to be done with whatever you're doing on the inside there and you're going to take your arms out, the secondary gloves and the sleeve guards would come off before you pulled your hands out, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Sometimes it's easier too if you get kind of one extra size up on the second pair. It goes on a little bit easier over the other ones. So just doing the best you can to kind of protect your wrists and things there, because once your hands are in there, you're potentially in an uncontrolled zone in there as far as contamination goes. So you've got double gloves, you've got sleeve guards on, and you can see kind of the purpose now. As I'm in this enclosure, the most I can pretty much reach is up to my sleeve guards here. So you would do your operations and things like that. Then before you pulled your arms out, you would take your sleeve guards off and your secondary gloves. And I'll show you at the end of this kind of a couple little techniques to make sure that's done as safe as possible as well. So now we'll get into how to use this bulk powder system correctly or safely. It's pretty straightforward. This system is designed with a constant fixed face opening located right here. It does have this hinge door, like a lot of the systems do, that you can open for extra access to put something in or something like that. You definitely want to, when you have open containers or open containers of bulk chemical coming up through the opening here, you want to make sure this is down, because all the barrier that you're working that's protecting you from what's inside there is just a face velocity here at the front. And that's, all these systems are set at about 80 feet per minute. And it generally works like a fume hood. So it's that negative pressure of flowing air that kind of maintains a barrier between you and what's going on the inside. So keep making sure this is down when you have things open. It's okay to open it to put things in and out. And so basically you have everything in here. That's one thing I forgot to mention, was you want to make sure you have everything in the enclosure that you need kind of before you start your operation. Because if you need to pull your hands out, potentially you have to go through that whole process of taking off your sleeve guards and your outer gloves, and that, that could just add time to your day. So you want to make sure you get pretty much everything you need in here, whether it be scoops or spatulas, weigh boats, containers, vials, the actual material, and bags and wipes and things like that. So get it all in there and get it ready for when you're going to actually start the process. So assuming you have everything in here ready to go, you would, for this system, you would have a drum right here ready to go with the cover off. You would have the 2 bags would be inside the drum. So you would take the outer bag and you actually wrap it around this flange right here, and then this elastic engages around the bag and onto that flange and holds the bag in place. Then you would take the secondary bag that you would open up and push it just on top here, and then this folds down and locks it all in place so it's a nice clean surface once you're all done. So now you've got exposed bulk chemical right here ready to be dispensed. So you would take your scoop or whatever you're going to use to dispense it out of the bulk chemical and scoop it into a different container, into small aliquots and things like that. You want to be, because we're working off basically an air barrier here for protection, you want to kind of keep your movements at a controlled manner. You wouldn't want to be flying around with your arms and things like that, because potentially you could create a velocity stronger than what the incoming air is, and then potentially things could be coming out. So you want to kind of just keep things a little bit methodical, and this kind of goes for fume hood work and everything like that as well. So you do your process, you get everything dispensed and ready to go. Once you're done with this bulk container, you would then flip this back up, push that inner bag back down, kind of tidy it up a little bit, undo this bag, push it back down, and then that's kind of out of the way. And then you would take all the containers you got ready to take to other places. You would either want to wipe down on the outside, because again, they're in the contaminated zone, so the outside of the vials or the bottles and things like that are contaminated. So you either want to wipe them down with a wet wipe or put them into a secondary bag before you take them to the next location. So you kind of got that all ready to go sitting here, and it depends on how messy the process was or how messy you were with the process. You might want to wipe down the base or the sides or the front door here. Then when it's time to be done with this system, you would take as you pull your arms out, take your sleeve guards off here, and then grab the outer glove, and then that one's done. And we can either put a waste chute on the side here, or sometimes people just put a little waste basket in there, or a bag that you can take out later that you put this waste in. So then you do the same thing on this side. Take this off, everything stays in here. Now you have a 99% clean pair of gloves to go to the next location where you'd re-put your sleeve guards on and re-put your outer gloves on as well. So that's pretty much the overview on this system and how to use it correctly. This is the on-off switch for all the systems. I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. So this basically powers up the alarm, the fan boxes, everything. So you want to make sure that this is lit green and at least stays on for about 4 or 5 minutes before you actually do any activity. That way you know the velocities come up to speed and everything's ready to use. Also, every system has an alarm with it. You might get a beep now and again just because of the air changes in the room and the HVAC system, but you want to make sure in general that both are reading green and that there's no audible beeps going on while you're doing your process. You might also get a beep if you forget to put this down. You put this up to put something in, and then you forget to put it down. Your face area is so great that your velocity is about half, so you might get a beep, or you probably will get a beep or two with that open. So again, just make sure you get everything all set. The sensors that feed the alarm are located on each end of the airfoil on this system, and a little bit different than the other systems. So you want to make sure that these stay clear, otherwise you might get false alarms just by blocking the airflow through the sensors. And that's generally the idea for that one. So the only other thing to mention about this system is, unlike the other systems, this is the one system that you'll have potentially the most chemical being manipulated, because you have that bulk drum where you're going to dispense into smaller aliquots. So this is the one system that you need to be a little bit more methodical with your movements and things like that, and to just be conscientious of closing up that bag when you're done and kind of keeping things neat and tidy. And this is definitely another good, because there's so much being worked on in here, definitely a great idea to keep your arms in throughout the whole process and de-glove and de-sleeve guard before you pull your hands out and move on to another process. So keep everything in here, keep everything beyond this barrier until you're all done, then come out. To come in and out like this, you'll definitely pull some of that product out with you on your hands or just in the airstream that you're pulling in and out of. So it's really important. The next step or the next level of containment for these types of systems is actually an isolator where you have fixed gloves. Those types of systems, you can put your hands in and take them out and put your hands in. The problem with those is you don't have this much flexibility. You're forced to work in those thick gloves in one location. The movement's pretty tough. So this kind of gives you a little bit better mobility in the system for your process, but at the same time, there's a couple key things to remember, like keeping your arms in and your hands in and not pulling out, and also, more importantly for the other units, because this one's kind of hard to do it, but to not put your head inside this unit. Kind of pretend that this is a kind of a fixed barrier right here. You don't want anything in your breathing zone and things like that to pass to the inside of that barrier. So that's pretty much it for that system. Next, we'll go on to the blending system here. This system is a little bit different than the bulk powder system. It's designed specifically for this piece of equipment or this type of operation. A couple of the differences that you can see, it has still a fixed face opening, which is really good for optimal containment, but it also employs a slidable sash so that this face opening moves up and down as your needs change on the inside of the unit for high and low access and mid-level access. So you can potentially harvest material down here like this and clean the base of the operation and make changes to the equipment. And then as simply as moving your arms up like this, you could get up here to pour powder into the top of the blender and do manipulations up here, and then again come back down like this. So you get a really wide range of movement and accessibility. But again, because this is an open face system, just relying on the airflow to keep everyone protected, all those same principles apply, that you want to keep your arms in, you want to have those sleeve guards on with the double gloves, get everything ready in here before you start your process so you don't have to take your arms out, and do your process, do everything you need to do, then take your arms out and go to the next process. If you have to take your arms out to go get something to bring it back in, you want to go through that quick process of de-sleeving and degloving and then re-sleeve and re-glove to go back in. These also have extra access doors above and below the face opening, and that's only to load something in and out. You definitely, once something is loaded and ready to go, and you're ready to actually open containers and to pour things and things like that, you need to be to this face opening right here, have everything closed up, because this is where that 80 feet per minute, which is the key face velocity for containment, is set to, is this face opening size. So again, having your arms in here, getting everything ready to go, and then just allowing your arms to move the sash up and down. As you keep things in, you can move over here, do something here, get some powder, move up here, just let it go with your arms for a second, put it down like that, moving things down like this, and just getting things ready to go. Again, once your containers are full with whatever you're going to dispense into, you either want to wipe the outside of those containers and/or put them into a secondary bag before you take them to another process location or another enclosure system. Then when you get it over there, you can unbag it and it's ready to go. Remembering that everything inside these units is contaminated, you can see just in the side of containers and things that there's things on the outside of the containers that you want to make sure kind of stays encapsulated while you take it to the next location. Again, the green on and off button controls the whole system, so you wouldn't want to use this system unless you were ensured that this green button was lit and also that the alarm read normal. There's a red light that reads normal on here. This alarm's a little bit different than the other alarms. All the other systems have this type of alarm except for that one. And what this has, it actually measures the face velocity through a tube here rather than sensors located right at the face opening. So if for some reason you have this open, it's not going to read very well. You're going to get an alarm that tells you to lower the door. And also if for some reason you left this one down or something like that, this will alarm as well. But it should stay in the green and everything working fine, no audible sounds if you're in this, even in this type of arrangement, even with it moving up and down, it will be fine. Any questions on this system?
So how difficult it is to have like some extension on this, like, because right now I'm thinking of putting one more feeder into it.
Yep.
But the space is like a little constrained, so I would like to have this extension put in so that.
Add another
Could you
piece?
repeat the question?
Sure. So basically what was asked was, can we add another area to the side of this to increase the inside usable space on the system? And the answer is yes. If you notice, all the systems except for this one have removable panels all the way around. So the reason we did that was for future flexibility and also to be able to clean and get things in and out as well. But what we can do is take these panels off and potentially add another section to the side. Then that side would have removable panels on it as well. So we could add another section to it.
How difficult it is to take the panel off?
It's basically taking off these screws all the way around here, and then we made up another system that would attach to those screws, and then you've got that extra space. We are limited by a few little things. We have a crossbar here that has to stay just for the rigidity of the whole system. But again, we can utilize these two openings and add on to the side as well. We can either do it just this high up to the bar, or we can do it the whole way. You just have to work around that bar for the other side of the system.
Height of the crossbar can be adjusted, right? Right now it is here, it can go up or down.
That I'd have to find out about. Right now it can't be adjusted. It's fixed in between these two uprights, but we might be able to take this whole side off and add to it, or take this whole side off and redo it so the bar was taller or higher up. So yeah, it's really, all these systems are able to be knocked down. Some of it's a little bit harder than just adding an extension to the side, but nonetheless, it definitely has the ability to change like that. So we can talk more about that too if you need that soon. Any other questions on this?
The white pants, always wet, right?
Yes. Yep. Sorry.
Could you repeat that?
Yep, I definitely will. So basically, Marilyn was asking what's the best way to wipe down the inside of a system, and that goes for really any system that's you're working with powders. A lot of people tend to use a dry method or just a paper towel or a paper cloth, and it just really, the dry method just smears things around. It doesn't pick up that much. So you want to make sure you use a wet wipe, whether that's this type that we supplied with the systems or any other type of wet wipe, but the wetness of it will pick up a lot better a lot of the things on the surfaces. And it's a really good idea after every use or after every couple of uses to kind of wipe down as much as you can reach as a general cleanup, and that way things don't accumulate and then potentially you get more exposure or even cross-contamination between different products and things. So it's keeping a set of wet wipes in there. Again, kind of get everything prepared so you don't have to go get the wet wipes and deglove and reglove. You can have it all in there, and before you're done, you just wipe everything down. And it's a really good idea too to even wipe your gloves before you deglove. That way you get 99% onto the wet wipe and not on your gloves, which makes that other process a little bit easier as well. Does that answer your question? Okay. Also for this system, it has rubber stoppers that stop it from going too far up or too far down. These should last for a long time, but over time they might tend to loosen up and things like that. So you might want to just once a year tighten up these screws, make sure everything's kind of tight and working well. And if you see a stopper is lost or something like that, give us a call and we can supply a new stopper so that everything stays in the right range and things don't open up where they shouldn't be opening up. Okay, now this system is, again, different from the other systems. It offers a temperature, humidity controlled environment on the inside. It has a level of safety protection as well built into it through negative pressure, which I'll talk about. But it also, the main purpose is for a controlled environment for whatever process is going on in the inside of this. How it works is, and I'll just open this to show, there's riser tubes on the inside here, and they come up through the base and out through the side. So the incoming conditioned air comes in through the riser tubes and then enters the environment through these tubes, through these slots, moves across and actually at a 45-degree angle or so down to this pickup tube, which then goes back down to the fan filter unit, filters the air, reconditions the air, and then recirculates it. This door that I have open is for access for loading equipment in and out and getting things like that in and out that are that big that need that kind of access. It's important to make sure these are engaged all the way and the gaskets are tight when you close this. And then for general loading of smaller containers and bags of powders and vials and things like that you're going to use, you would do that through the pass-through. And then come in through these iris ports, which I'll talk about. Take it, and you've got a barrier between the in and out, so you don't disrupt the atmosphere on the inside too much when you open that smaller cube, rather than opening the big door and then you lose all your atmospheric controls and you have to kind of start over again. Again, this system has the green on button, which controls the temperature humidity control module. It controls the fan unit. There's an LEL detector, a low explosion limit detector on the inside as well. Will let you know via an audible alarm if the concentration of solvent vapors gets to too high of a level. So all that's powered, and the alarm for the airflow system, all that's powered by this one button. So again, you want to make sure this is green lit, the alarm reads good, the LEL detector reads good, and then for the environmental part of it, you want to wait about 10 minutes or so once you turn it on to let the atmosphere come up to condition. And you'll actually see on these two dials at the bottom, one's for temperature and one's for humidity. When it gets to the right temperature and humidity, then you know that your environment's ready to be used. The safety level that's built into this is via the fan filter unit and a small bleed off to the house exhaust system. It actually provides a negative pressure through any opening. So as you insert your arms like this, you create kind of small holes around your arm, and air is actually flowing from you to the inside of the enclosure around your arm, so things aren't coming out. So even with these wide open, the air is still coming in, not out. So you have a level of protection as well. With this system, it's even more important than the rest because we don't have a constant face opening here. Things can kind of change a lot. So the flows change a little bit on the way in here. So you want to make sure, especially with this system, that you have your sleeve guards on and your double gloves, and you kind of keep your arms in as you do your whole process. It's important to get everything, again, set up in here, ready to go before you put your arms in, because even though this is a more of a controlled environment, it still offers a level of safety, but the inside of this is contaminated. There's powders flying around or solvents flying around that are sticking to your gloves and your sleeve guards. When you're done, again, taking off your sleeve guards on the way out, and leaving them in there in a wastebasket or something like that. This one's a little bit harder. It's going to take a little bit of practice to get these sleeve guards and gloves off, but still, even if you have to pull your arm halfway out and start taking them off, it's better than taking them all the way out and walking around the lab. So again, it might not be perfect for getting the sleeve guards off and the gloves, but you definitely want to go through that process even if it takes a couple extra seconds. And once you're, like I mentioned, once you start your process, you want to leave your arms in until you're done with the process, then deglove and desleeve, take your arms out and go to the next location. Any questions on this system? Again, just to reiterate, it's very important to keep your arms in throughout the whole process and then deglove and desleeve on the way out when you're done the process. If you have to go get something to put back in here, you want to deglove and desleeve, and when you come back to put new sleeve guards on and new gloves, even if it takes a couple extra minutes in between all that. Utilizing the pass-through even to put things in there that you're going to need in a few minutes. Just get it all in there before you get going, because then once your arms are in, you can easily reach in here to get things without taking your arms out and thus having to take off your sleeve guards and gloves. Just thinking ahead a little bit will save you time as far as degloving, desleeving, and things like that. Also having some wet wipes in there to wipe the inside and wipe the base when it's done so things don't accumulate as well. And you definitely want to limit how much or how often you open this, because the back side of this panel is contaminated potentially because it's the inside of the unit. So before you open it, you might want to wipe down that panel. And then if you don't have to open it, that's even better. That'll help with the environment control, and just utilize this box. It's only really necessary to open that when you have a bigger piece of equipment that you need to load in. So this unit, unlike the others, like we mentioned before, is for a whole nother process, and it's actually for a tablet press that fits in here. It's designed specifically for that tablet press and really should only be used for that tablet press. And the tablet press isn't in there yet, but essentially this rubber membrane on the bottom here allows the tablet press to come up through here, and then it seals around the top end of the tablet press where all the operations actually happen, and then it keeps the control cabinet and the motors and things like that for the press outside the dirty environment, so you're not contaminating the motors and contaminating the controls and things like that. So just the business end of the press is on the inside of the containment system. The press that this was designed for has a couple key access requirements. One right in the front here for harvesting the finished tablets. A side access point here for turning a flywheel to unjam the press now and again. Access on the sides here for cleaning and things like that of the press before and after processes. And then in the back, those two doors in the back for dumping powders into the hoppers and loading hoppers onto the back of the press itself. So there's access all the way around this system designed in, and it's been engineered airflow wise to be able to open a certain number of these access points at a time, which we'll discuss in a minute. So the main access points here at the front where the controls are and the harvesting of the tablets and things like that, a lot of the operation happens here. And this is the constant face opening that you can work through that. This is allowable to come down like this And this face opening still has that 80 feet per minute we were talking about to be safe. So you can actually work in this big of an opening as long as no other doors are open. So you can use this opening as much as you want to. Again, it's key. If you're going to flip this down and an activity has already happened in there, you want to make sure that this is clean, this side of it, because that's the contaminated side of that door. So you can work like this however you need to. If you need to open this door to get to a higher part of it, to unjam a tablet or something like that, you want to close this one before you open this one. And you can get in here to do the operation. Close this, and then you can go back down here and open this one. So it's really key in this system, in order to give access all the way around and high and low for this type of equipment. We were able to do that, but it's important that the user understands opening and closing the doors can't happen all at the same time. You have to close one in order to open another, is kind of the key thing to remember on this system. So this is your front access. With this all closed up, you have the ability to open one of these other doors on this side. Do something there. You've got a door up here to potentially load a hopper or something like that. Another door here. And then you've got doors in the back. Again, making sure the rest of the doors are closed up. You use these doors to dump into a hopper. Or this door to load a hopper up on there, or to get something ready in the back here to load it up. It's key, again, before you open bottles and containers inside these units, to have them all sitting here ready to go. That way, when you are ready to dispense, you open this door, you put your arms in, now it's contaminated. You can leave your arms right here while you do everything. And then you de-sleeve, de-glove, close this door, and go to the other access point, re-sleeve and re-glove for that process. Again, keeping everything clean on the inside, wiping containers or and/or bagging them on the way out is key for all these systems, because that inside of the unit is definitely contaminated, and you'll have whatever's in there is contaminated, including your arms, your hands, and the containers as well. Keeping your head outside the barrier is key as well. So you're breathing in and out of your mouth, creating a negative pressure at your breathing zone. So if your mouth or your face enters this area here, so say here you get in like this, you potentially broke that barrier with your breathing zone, and you're now breathing in a concentrated puff of whatever's going on the inside there. So it's really key to keep your face and your breathing zone outside that environment. Rather than kind of climb in to access something, take the time to deglove and de-sleeve and go over to another access door. We kind of went through a lot of different iterations and a lot of revisions to the design to make sure that the access is pretty much as it needs to be for that piece of equipment for the press. So utilize the accesses rather than climb into the unit, and that goes for all the units as well. If you find that you need an extra access on one side or something like that, we can redo a panel to add another door and things like that. So rather than climb in and contaminate yourself, just let safety know that a certain area in the enclosure is not working out perfect. Any questions on this unit?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The first question I have is, like, once you open these doors, how you decontaminate these doors before you open it? Okay, that you said all these doors will be contaminated from inside.
Yes. So basically,
Can you run that by me?
yep, I'm sorry. So the question was, how do we make sure that the back side of these doors are as clean as possible before they're open and then potentially exposed to the lab? So the answer to that question, first of all, there's a certain amount of static charge on a unit like this because it's made out of acrylic. So powders and things will stay on the door unless there's a lot of motion or unless you actually rub them. So that's kind of the first thing to remember. So opening a door, if you forget to wipe it down, which I'll talk about in a minute, it's not the end of the world. You won't see as much exposure as if you climbed in there in the airspace. But on top of that, it's really important if you're going to open these doors to wipe the inside of the door with a wet wipe. So it's good to keep a container of wet wipes in here, wipe the back side of that door, and then open it up. If you're working with a lot of powders and things are really flying around and sticking to the side, during the process, it's a good idea to kind of give everything a quick wipe, especially these doors, because that is a really good point. In order to compromise to have all this access, we had to have the ability to let these open to the outside. So keeping those clean is kind of part of the user process.
Cleaning from inside, do we have enough space so that we can clean these doors from inside?
Right. So you'd just be able to clean.
No, so we'll have enough space once we put the press inside it.
Right. Yes.
I think because press is
Yeah.
very bulky.
The press itself is actually just a portion of this white area.
So if you have press up to this point, do you have
Right.
enough space to clean this?
Yeah. The
from
press
inside?
is a good couple of inches all the way in around this. So you'll have room on every side to, and it's hard to illustrate that until the press is actually in here, but it's been designed. We also need that area for airflow to get around. So if things are too tight in there, the air won't circulate well, and then things really concentrate. So you'll have enough room to get your hand and your arm on all the edges. Now you might be only able to reach 3/4 of this door without reaching inside, so that's when you need to go to the back side and clean. The way we control the air in these systems, it really should not accumulate very much on these doors per each process. But if you didn't clean after each one and you used the press 3 times, then you might see an accumulation. So if you had this all cleaned before you started, you should not have to wipe these too much during that one process. Now before the next process, you want to make sure it's decontaminated and cleaned again. Otherwise things will start to build up on the doors.
So can we like have this, like all these, like we are working with all the powders. So if you put like something off, like, you know, so that the static charge will not build up on this, and so the powder will not stick. So whatever the powder will fall onto this,
Yep.
eventually, you know, will
Right.
only at the bottom.
Yes, there is certain cleaners that actually have. Sorry, yes. So the question was, is there a cleaner or a wipe, a wet wipe that'll actually put a coating or something like that on the inside here so that the static charge doesn't build up and things don't potentially want to stick to the side of the enclosures? And the answer is yes. They're actually, those wipes that we supply with the systems have a chemical in there that actually puts a coating, and the coating actually builds up as you use those so that it even offers more and more static discharge around the whole thing. There's other wipes out there that do the same thing. If you just use water, it's really not going to do much other than knock the static down for that brief moment until it dries back out. But those actually put an anti-static coating on there, and that film kind of builds up over time. So the more you wipe it with those wipes, the better the anti-static quality becomes. So that's a good question.
So how long that can stay? Like, once you wipe down with this wipe, then how long that can stay as it is static?
Right. I guess it's hard to say, but it'd at least be for that process. And like I said,
if you're running like as we are like thinking of doing this like 24/7 kind of thing.
right.
So you know, so if once you put this and then for say for like 8 hours or something, like
Right.
you tell it this jammed up, you have to do some certain kind of work.
Right.
So like if this will stay that long, or just like, you know, for a few hours or whatever, like that will have some time.
Right. The more you use it, the more it builds up. The less often you'd have to use it once it builds up. But in the beginning, you'd want to wipe it probably every 4 hours or so. And we can find out the exact number, how long that actually lasts on before it dissipates off. But it lasts quite a long time. It's not something that generally, it's kind of, you'd have to wipe it with water in order to get that film off. So, you know, probably once every 4 hours would be a safe estimate.
So like, is there anything like on this plexiglass from inside, if you can put like permanent coating, so that like, you know, transparent permanent coating. So
Right.
that every time you don't have to do like, because like this plexiglass is known for having the static charge.
Right.
So if you have like this one kind of conductive material,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things like that out there that you could put on. The acrylic that we use is, I don't want to say it's an anti-static acrylic, but it actually has some anti-static qualities built into it. It's a high-grade acrylic that has those types of things. It also has a very close cell makeup to it, so solvents and more rigorous cleaning chemicals don't get into the cells and break it up as easy. So it is a high-grade acrylic, so it already has kind of a built-in static dissipative quality. That combined with that wiping, you should have no problem with buildup. Also, like I was saying before, the way we control the air, and it's the way we use airflow modeling to make sure that we don't have a lot of reverse flows sitting in one location, kind of sticking to one spot. The air kind of comes in, sweeps the process, and right out through the fan filter unit. There's not a lot that has potential for sticking on the sides, but depending on how messy the process is, that will determine how often you need to wipe it. But generally, you know, once every 4 hours or so, if you wiped it, you'd be plenty good enough to open and close these doors as need be. And probably even less than that, but that's kind of a good safety factor. Okay, now we're going to talk about the large enclosures here, kind of the build-in-place process enclosures. These were designed as big as possible, as deep as possible, as tall as possible, to allow users or allow you folks to build your process on the inside, putting tables in there and all sorts of things. So feel free to, you know, build your process. It has the big doors on the front that open all the way up on both sides to load things in and out. It has this tray on the bottom, has wheels underneath. You can actually pull the whole tray out and potentially go to another location to put a piece of heavy equipment on and roll it back. It's weighted. This is rated up to about 1,500 pounds for weight, and the wheels will still work and all that sort of thing. So definitely feel free to use that trolley to go retrieve equipment that you're going to put in there as well. And then the doors themselves, pinching these together releases the pins on the top and the bottom. And it has a wheel on the door as well to make it a little easier to open and close. Once you close this, it's important because there's a gasket there to kind of give it a push like that on top and bottom to make sure that these open back up and the pins go into the holes. That way you know it's sealed all the way around. So that's kind of the main access for loading things in and out. But definitely, like we talked about in the other ones, when you're going to have open containers in there and work with open powders, you want to work through the controlled access points, which we'll go into now. So this has a series of slide open doors. There's a series on this panel, and then there's a series on this panel, so you can work through either side. It's very important. These are designed to work through one opening at a time. So if you have this open, you definitely don't want to open this in order to access the bottom. In order to slide this open to access something down low, you want to lower this one back down by unreleasing these tension screws, lowering it back down, tightening them. Then you can go ahead and open this one, close that. You can open this one. Then with this middle one open, if you feel that you need a little access down in this area, you can loosen these screws. And this one slides up to cover that spot. And now you've got access here. But it's key to make sure that you only have one of these openings, regardless of which one it is, open at a time, and no more than that. To have this open and to have this open, there's not enough velocity to keep you safe from what's going on the inside. So again, it's key to keep these closed. Like all the other systems, this is a barrier created by airflow entering the unit by the fan filter units. So it's very important that your breathing zone and your face stay well outside this kind of pretend barrier here with the airflow coming in. If for some reason you go like this to reach something, you're going to breathe in whatever's on the inside, and it potentially could be concentrated because it's in a box rather than dissipated in the room. So it's very important to keep your face and your breathing zone outside that plane there. Again, sleeving, double gloving before you go in here, and you can do your process. If you need to adjust openings, you need to take those sleeve guards off and gloves off, slide the openings up and down, get it back, and then you can put your arms back in and do the rest of your work. It's important, again, to make sure you have things in there that you need so you don't have to go in and out too often. That'll just save you time as far as gloving and things like that. The way the air is controlled, again, like the other systems, a lot should not accumulate on the back side of the panel here, but it's a good idea every once in a while to go through and kind of decontaminate the whole thing with the wet wipe type system. So again, closing the opening down allows you to go over and open a different opening. The alarms are set up so that if you open too many openings, if you have this open and you forget to close it and you open this, after about 30 seconds or so, the alarm will beep and the red light will come on and tell you that you have too many openings. So you just need to go and close down one of the openings, and then you're back. The alarm should go back to green and back to good. All of these have pass-throughs. All the systems have pass-throughs. The square ones the thought was for material pass-throughs, for bags of powder and things like that, or conveyors or bulky tubing and things like that can pass right through here into the other unit. And it also has kind of tubing pass-throughs, tighter pass-throughs for passing cords and tubes through between each unit that go right through here, through these iris ports. And they all the way around the perimeter at this level, you have the ability to pass in and out of each unit. And these can be adjusted as well. All these three panels on the three levels are all identical. So if you needed pass-through up high, you could take these two panels off and swap them with the ones up high, and you'd have the pass-throughs up here, or vice versa, you could have them down at the bottom as well. And that goes all the way around the unit. So rather than pull tubing out here and to pass it in here or run it up over the top or something like that, just move these around as you need to so that you can pass things through and keep everything neat and tidy as well, which will also help with the cleaning. There's also some pass-throughs for gases and tubing and things like that in the roof. So you can pass electrical cords, tubing for gases and things like that, solvents down through those and connect to your process. Again, kind of keeping things neat and tidy rather than having tubes and things running on the floor or something like that. Like I said, all the panels around here are removable, so if you find you need an additional pass-through or a different type of door, high or low or something like that, we can just take that panel off and supply a new door that affixes right over that opening, and then you could have that extra access as well. The lights aren't on, but actually all these units have lights up on top here. They're LED lights, and they should provide enough light for the whole thing. On the unit this size, there's 2 of them. If you need more light, we can add another strip or 2 or another light or 2 up on top. They essentially just sit up there on little rubber feet. So if you'd rather have the light more in the middle and not so much on the side, you can potentially just move that light and reposition it wherever you need to on the top here, and move it around as you need. Again, it has the green button up on top that controls the fan units, the alarm, the whole system for this enclosure itself. Each enclosure, which is 6 feet wide, has its own alarm, own fans, and own filters. So each one is independent. So as you use this one, you need to worry about that alarm that's right above your head. As you use the other one, it has a different alarm above your head for that unit. So if you hear one beeping down there and you're working in this one and it's not beeping, you're okay. It's something else someone else is doing, or airflow affecting the alarm down the way. And that's about it. Any questions on this one?
One quick question, Tim.
Sure.
You mentioned keeping your face and breathing zone. How far out from your body does your breathing zone extend if you want to keep that out of the enclosure?
Right. I mean, that's probably a good question for... So the question was, how far do you want to keep your breathing zone out, or your face outside the enclosure, assuming that your breathing zone kind of extends a little bit beyond the front of your face. So maybe you can answer that one.
Say 6 inches. If there was a work, input should be 6 inches back from the.
So I mean, if our work's 6 inches in though, but our protection is not that 6 inches, right? The protection is here. So is it 6 inches beyond the front of the
Right.
hood itself?
Yeah, 6 inches would be the good thing to remember. If you get a little bit closer, you've got that 6-inch safety factor built in. But like you said, there's a certain velocity that you're breathing in, and in order to keep you from overcoming the velocity here with your breathing in velocity, you want to be that little bit away, that couple inches away. And that's a good point too I want to mention for the rest of the systems, is all your work for all these systems needs to be set back probably 4 to 6 inches at a minimum on the inside of the enclosure. And that's so you have an opportunity for the air to enter, stabilize, and then take away contaminants as they're coming off the process, or what you're disturbing in the process. So again, if you can imagine, if you do a setup right here and you put a beaker right here, there's potential for things to kind of leak out into the room, where if it's set back here, it gives it a chance for the velocity to get there, capture it, and take it away. The other thing to remember too is this right here has 80 feet per minute right at this opening. As it gets back into this bigger area, it dissipates quickly. So 6 inches back, now you've got probably 40 or 30 feet per minute. So when you open containers, it's not going to blow things off your scoop. If you get closer to this, you might actually see a little wind tunnel here that'll actually blow things right off your scoop. So again, there's kind of 2 reasons to keep things 6 or so inches back from the inside of the opening. And then, like we talked about, this, I'm still outside the plane, but my breathing could potentially overcome that velocity inside the unit. So you want to make sure you're back a few inches and not reaching your head in like this. This unit specifically is really easy to get your head in here like this. And as soon as you do that, you're potentially breathing in everything that's on the inside there. So it's very, very important to not reach in with your head. What some people kind of remember when they're thinking about that is you've got your sleeve guards up to about your elbow. And if you keep only your elbow reaching in, if you don't reach in any more than your elbow, that'll keep your breathing zone out where it needs to be. If you reach up to your shoulder, then your head kind of goes with it. But if you just reach up to your elbow 99% of the time, that'll generally keep your breathing zone where it needs to be. Any other questions? Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions on these systems? Again, just to reiterate, the alarms are set up based on relative velocity. There's a little tube up on top, and it does a relative calculation on what's going on at the face opening here. So every once in a while, the diffusers of the room kick on and things like that. So you might get a beep once in a great while, that's normal. What you're looking for the alarms is if it stays an alarm for 30 seconds or a minute. If that stays an alarm, then you know something's wrong. If it beeps every once in a while, it can be a pain and we should adjust that if it happens a lot. But if it happens every once in a while, it could just be somebody walked by too quick. It could be that the air handler unit took a second to kick on, that sort of thing. So if it beeps once in a while, it's nothing really to worry about. It's if it stays an alarm and you can't figure out what it is, that's when you need to stop your operation and figure out why the alarm's going off, correct it, and then go back to work. So, any other questions on any of these systems? No? I guess just the key points to remember is to keep your head and your body outside the enclosures, kind of remembering just to reach up to your elbow and not much more. Not that you can't reach in a little bit, but just be conscientious of your breathing zone, not entering into that plane, so you're breathing in those powders. Each system is designed for the piece of equipment, so some of it has some flexibility built in where you could potentially open too many doors and not have containment. So that's why this training is kind of important, and understanding how to use each piece, because each one has a little bit easier ability to overcome the containment, especially these big systems. You could very easily open too many doors and just disenable the alarm, and now you've got no containment. You're exposing the lab, exposing yourself and other people in the lab. So it's really key to make sure you leave the alarms on and work through the controlled points. Basically, one thing to remember on all the units is one opening at a time. On some of the units, that's a fixed opening, you can't go wrong. Some of the other units, you've got doors all the way around. On these units, you've got big openings just about on the whole front here. So it's very easy to create more opening than's allowable. So it's especially using these units, the press unit, and maybe the blending unit, it's key to remember to just work through the single opening at a time. That's a good thing to remember. Double gloving with the sleeve guards, taking them on and off as you enter in and out of there is key. Some people look at that as to be a little bit of a pain in the neck to have to deglove and desleeve every time. But if you remember, the alternative is an isolator where you're working through thick, heavy gloves in a single position. Even though you can put gloves everywhere, you still have to go in and out of these gloves and work through in a very robotic type manner. So this allows you the ability to have some motion and be able to access a lot of the enclosures without having that rigidity of like an isolator. But you do have to go through an extra process of putting sleeves on and gloves on. So it adds a little bit of time to your process, but it adds a lot more flexibility working with this rather than an isolator type system or a fixed glove system. All right, well, thank you for your time. Any other questions? I'll be here for a little while if you want to ask me.
Where's the light switch?
That green switch controls everything, lights and all.
Turns on lights and everything?
Yeah. There's a power strip up on top. When you hit that green switch, it powers everything. If the lights don't go on, that means up top it's not plugged in.
So do you have any particle counters in the room outside the hoods which monitors the concentration?
There isn't right now, but that's probably something EHS will either come through and do a spot check type thing, or they might set up particle counters, constant, at least for the first little while, to make sure everything's okay with the systems. All these systems have been tested for a first round on site here with certain users, and there was actually we saw a couple spikes in the exposure, and that was due to just not understanding exactly how to access the units. And sometimes when you're doing the testing, it's so restricted and defined that you have a tendency to do something not just right, and that's probably what happened with those little spikes. So that was kind of the purpose of the secondary training, to make sure everyone understood exactly the openings to work through and keeping your head outside the breathing zone and things like that so that it works just right. But I think EHS probably will be doing some more monitoring as well to make sure things are working just right.
How about turning the units off? Are they on a timer or?
They're not. They'll basically be on until you hit the switch.
So plug it again?
Yep. Again, that's a question for EHS. They have the ability to go on and off via that switch. When you turn it off, you lose all airflow. You lose the lights and stuff like that as well, but you definitely lose the airflow. So with that powered down, you want to make sure that the inside of the unit is decontaminated, almost 100%, I would say, and that you have everything closed up that you can have closed up. Because if there's any residual on the inside and you turn it off, there's potential for just the room air to pull things out while it's sitting there. But if it's decontaminated and cleaned, you could turn it off and nothing's going to come out because there's nothing in there.
Okay.
So
If we're doing a messy operation and we've been working on it for a while, do we just leave it on until we come back the next day, or
right. Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, the manufacturer recommendation would be to leave these on 24/7 no matter what. But if for some reason you're not going to use this unit for 6 months, it's not worth the energy to leave it on. So if you decontaminate it really well, you can turn that off and let it sit. But the good rule of thumb is to leave everything on. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you again. I appreciate the time.